The first time? Oh, you bet I remember the first time. There was this euphoric feeling, an energy, an excitement, unlike anything I ever experienced in my life before. It was Tremont Avenue, south side of the Bronx. My first encounter with PCP drug. There's only one setback, and that is that feeling, that awesome excitement that I was feeling would become elusive. Because for 25 years, I chased, and I chased, and I stole, and I deceived, and I lied, just to obtain that feeling. But I would never again experience that, because the drug is elusive. If I were to tell you all the opportunities that I squandered, all the people that I hurt, the lying, the cheating, the conniving, the shameful things, if I had an opportunity to do it again, no bet, it isn't worth it. Everything that I went through, the countless trips to the emergency room, the stitches, the bullets, I wouldn't do it again. The opportunities that were squandered. I was gifted with a strong arm and a love for baseball and an ability to hit the ball. But because my attention was drawn to the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol and partying, I would never stay in school. And thus my dream of maybe one day becoming a baseball player were destroyed. Because I chose to chase the dragon. Who knows? I think about a Major League Baseball player right in my neck of the woods, Bobby Bonilla, right from the South Bronx. Who knows? Who knows? I could have probably been like Bobby. But I'll never know now, because I squandered it. I had an opportunity at the age of 21 to be employed with the New York City Department of Sanitation, and I was summoned to Randall's Island for a physical. And instead of reporting to Randall's Island for the physical, I was now in Rikers Island, facing a felony and on my way upstate. I squandered an opportunity. I'm 60 years of age, and the ailing pains of growing old every day are front and center. And I could have been retired so long ago. But because of the opportunities that I squandered, I get up every day, dealing with pain and discomfort, and I have to go to work. But before I get ahead of myself, let me take you to the beginning. earliest recollection of my father takes me back to 96th Street, 1st Avenue in Manhattan. A one-bedroom apartment. There was the first time that I had any recollection of interacting with my father. I recall that me and my sister were in the room, we were playing with matches. My father comes in, grabs me, takes me to the kitchen, puts my hand over the stove. He didn't burn me, but I guess it was his way of deterring me from playing with matches. Soon after, I recall hearing a woman screaming frantically. For many years, I thought that had to be a dream. But understanding later on my father's propensity and his tendencies to be violent, I understood and came to the conclusion that the woman screaming in the room was my mother. And he was hurting her. My grandmother, who was to me one of the most godliest women I've ever known in my life. A woman who took pride in always telling me I had one boyfriend, one husband. Un solo novio, un solo esposo. And with that man, she had 23 kids. A woman who I would learn what it would be like to be dedicated. This woman would travel from Manhattan and 125th Street on 1st Avenue, walk over to the train, get on the 4 train, ride 45 minutes to Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, get off on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, take the number 3 train to New Locks, get off at Rockaway at Bedford-Stuyvesant, one of the most dangerous hoods in all of Brooklyn, walk 8 blocks to go to a small little hole in the wall. And that's where she would worship. And I would go with her and I would see this lifestyle. She would step in to help because my mother was unable to fend for us. My father had abandoned us at this point. She was left alone. And it was difficult. So my grandmother steps in to help us. I go live with her. And we went to that same location, the Palladino Projects on 125th Street, 1st Avenue. I recall one day, she says, Wilfredo, she says, go to the market and get me some coffee. So I walk over to 3rd Avenue, and as I'm crossing the street, I hear a car come to this screeching halt. A man jumps out of the car, and he calls my name. He says, Willie! And I looked, and I knew immediately it was that man, and I knew it was my father. We had this uncanny resemblance. And he comes to me, he grabs me and embraces me, but quickly begins to shift the blame and tell me that it was my mother's fault. And I was just glad to be interacting with him. He takes me to my grandma's house, and he tells my grandmother, I'll be back for him. He turns to me and he says, I'll be back to get you, Willie. I would be 21 years of age the next time that I would see my dad. Fast forward now to the age of about 9. My mother is doing a little better. She can now fend for me and my sister, so my grandmother agrees to, reluctantly, but she agrees to let us go back with my mom. And we go to the South Bronx in the 1970s. A place infested with drugs, gangs, violence, poverty. Not the ideal place to raise young children. But that was my lot. And I recall one day I had been whimpering about something, and my mom rears back and punches me in the stomach, looks me in the eye, and says to me, "Willie, you have got to be the man in the house. I don't have a time for you to be a wimp. You have got to protect your sister. You've got to be the man in this house. You've got to help me." Though there was just one problem with that whole scenario. All my life, I had no idea what a man was supposed to be like, look like. My earliest recollection was my uncles in my grandmother's house, and most of them were on heroin and not in their right mind. Not having my dad, not having a positive influence, how was I supposed to be a man? What did I know about being a man? But I'm tasked with this responsibility. And so I'm left to my own self, my sinful heart, to fend for however, and all that I know is what I'm seeing around me. While my mother would be at work, I'd be downstairs, hanging out in front of the building, and all that was, the only people hanging out in front of the building were the outlaws, the savage skulls. And so these were the people that I played baseball with, and when they weren't creating havoc and breaking people's heads, they used to like to get high on drugs and play baseball in the schoolyard. And these were the people that I would be surrounded with. And so I saw all sorts of horror. I saw gang initiations, I saw rumbles. I saw people being shot. This is what I knew. This is all I knew. This is all I saw. So now we're in junior high school, and right across the street from our high school there was a handball court, and that is where a lot of young people would be there hanging out, playing handball and so forth. And me and my sister would, because we loved playing handball. And I recall in the handball court one day, an older fella, he was just a bit older than me, was trying to talk to my sister. And I immediately stepped in, and he realized, okay, you know what? We could smash you, but we respect the fact that you're defending your sister. And he was okay with that. And he sort of befriended me. And after that, every day coming back to the handball court, we gravitated. I was accepted, though they were a little older than me, yet still they, because of that encounter of being a protector, they included me into their circle. Immediately, I had a sense of belonging. The void at home was filled with the boys there, the handball court. The only problem was that these guys influenced me in the wrong way. I saw them engage in drugs and alcohol, and none of them worked. And all they did was rob and do stick-ups, and that became appealing to me because I would see them go out, come back, I would see the guns, the respect they commanded, the money, and I thought, yeah, though they would never let me go with them because of my age, I would always be on the outskirts looking. Shortly afterwards, they all are arrested and sent to prison, and I'm on my own, so to speak. But now the things that I saw them do, and the quick money, and the accolades that came and the respect that came with that was something that I wanted, and so I undertook that sort of activity. And I picked up the gun and began to do the same thing that they were doing, committing armed robberies, and I caused a lot of havoc, a lot of people trouble, something that I'm terribly ashamed of. But those were the choices. Growing up in the South Bronx, you were either going to be the one that took it, or you would be had. It would be taken from you. And that led me into a lifestyle of committing crime and robberies. The year is 1979. There's a party drug that's the talk of the town. Everyone was doing it.
The smoking of marijuana arouses a good deal less alarm among drug authorities nowadays than a decade or so ago, although its safety and morality remain matters of dispute. But now the youth culture that first popularized marijuana is increasingly turning on with another drug, often smoked with marijuana, but far more unpredictable and dangerous. The drug is called angel dust, and Harold Dow has a report on it.
PCP, angel dust. And I remember my first time. The feeling was euphoric. The excitement, the energy, the invincibility I felt. It was amazing. It was something that I wanted to do over and over and over again. And now I had means of supporting that because I have taken the way of the gun. For the next 5 years, that's all that I would do. Would rob and wouldn't care about consequences. Whoever, whatever you got in my way, you were taken down. I continue this pattern, and it seemed as though there was no stopping until one day. I recall me and my uncle walking in the park, and we were hard up for money, and we saw 2 victims. And we approached them. I didn't have my pistol that day, but I had a bag, and so I gave the appearance of having a pistol as I put my hand in the bag and so forth. And after taking their belongings, people in the park just were enraged and began to chase us. And I dropped my bag and I ran, and we all ran. Didn't get caught by the crowd which was fortunate. But a grave mistake was made because in the bag was a number that was traced, and the detectives did their work, and I was able to be found. And the one thing that resounds continuously and always for a very, very long time was that I relinquished my freedom for $20 at that. That was my purse. And if you were to ask me, Willie, faced with that decision again, would you do that again? And I would say to you, no bet. No bet. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It was the longest bus ride I had ever taken. An 8-hour trip up to New York State, Clinton, Dannemora, a maximum security penitentiary that housed the most violent and notorious criminals in the state of New York. And the irony of it all is that for 5 years I committed armed robberies, and the one time I didn't have a gun, I was convicted of an armed robbery. Justice had finally caught up with me. As we approached the prison, and I saw this humongous wall just open up, and fear unlike anything that I ever experienced before just paralyzed me. And I knew and thought to myself, surely there's got to be someone here that I've done wrong to, because I've done so much wrong to so many people. Surely it would catch up with me. I would meet one of my enemies here and perhaps meet my demise. From the very first day, the things that I encountered and saw, the violence, the being told when to walk, when to talk, how to dress, when to eat, when not to eat, when to shower. I was no longer in control. I saw violence of high levels, stabbings, the beatings, but most of all, your freedom's taken from you. I guess the highlight of this whole experience was one day I'm traveling to school, and because I wasn't a central monitor criminal, I didn't have to be escorted everywhere I went. And I'm coming back from school, and as I'm coming back, all the gates are locked. And I realized that those who were high-profile cases, who were in protective custody, were coming. And they were going to the chow hall to eat. And I stood up on the fence looking, and I'm saying to myself, yeah, here come the gangsters. And I'm trying to act tough. And suddenly I engaged this one person in just straight up eye contact. And as he got closer to me, I just backed up. And I couldn't explain what I had felt, but it was eerie, it was supernatural. And it dawned on me, I recognized his face from seeing the magazines and the news. And I said to myself, my goodness, that was David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, the .44 caliber killer, the man who terrorized New York City for 10 months. And I'm in the same prison with this man. And I thought for a moment, what must the people outside of this wall think about us? And it was just a terrible feeling to feel that I was numbered among those people who were not favorable, who society didn't deem favorable. It was a low point in my life, a very low point in my life. So I'm awarded an early release, a conditional release, meaning that I'll be on parole for 4 years. Anything that's done wrong will send me right back to the same prison. I'm on the D train, getting off on Tremont Avenue in the Bronx, and as soon as I'm exiting the subway station, I see a friend of mine, Lenny. The first thing that came out of my mouth was, "Where's it at?" He takes me to this building, and within a matter of minutes, I hear this banging on the door, which is an indicator that that's the lookout telling us that the police are coming. And I just thought to myself, I haven't even gone home to see my mom. And I looked to the window and I said, "Don't panic, just jet down through the window. You know how to get out of here. You're familiar with this area." But I noticed that the door hadn't been broken down yet, so that meant that the police were not on the premises yet. So I bolted out the door. I made it to my mother's home, and I thought for a moment, I'm in a safe place. But that was not to be the case. My mother, at this point, was a drug addict and alcoholic. My house was in total disarray. The young woman that was with me and stood through my whole sentence realized that I wasn't the real deal and just left me. My kid sister was in the grips of an addiction in a very strong way. But what broke my heart the most was my little brother, Mark Anthony, who was only about 6 years old at this point. And I thought to myself, who's gonna look out for him? I've never been an example to him. What's gonna happen to my little brother? He's only a baby. Soon after that, my mother comes in the room and tells me that I have a phone call. At this point, I just didn't know which way to turn, and so I go and I grab the phone, and it was my father. And I thought for a moment, wow, here's my ticket out. Here's my help. I hadn't talked to him since I was 9 years old. But rather late than never, I would have took the help. And he tried to swindle me out of my Social Security number. And that went through me like a spear. I said to him, the one time that I need you the most, you've never done good by me, man. And I don't want to talk to you. And I hung up the phone, and I went to the room, and I cried bitterly. Now the pain of addiction, physical addiction because of the heroin, was just raining down on me. And now my heart was shattered and broken. My last bit of hope, at least I thought, was gone. And I just couldn't bear the stress and the pain of everything that was happening that day. I looked out through the window, and I remember my grandmother. And I remember how this woman was so faithful, so loving, and so kind, and a rock. And how she loved her God with all her mind, soul, and strength. and how she loved Jesus and talked to me about Jesus all the time. And I just looked out and had a conversation with God. And if it's true that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe upon him shall not perish but have eternal life, if that is true, please let this Jesus come into my heart. Let him help me, let him take away the pain, and I'll serve him. I'll dedicate my life to him. I believe the gospel message. It had been preached to me many times through the life of my grandmother. And it was becoming real to me that this was my only hope. Psalm 145:18 says, "You're nigh unto those who call upon you in sincerity." And that was a sincere cry for help. And Jesus heard my cry, and he came to my aid, and he rescued me. Instantaneously, the pain in my heart ceased. The physical pain from the heroin stopped. Deep sleep came over me. I could never sleep without the heroin. And I was able to sleep. And I wake up during the night. I don't know how long I had been sleeping, but I woke up and I had a desire to smoke a cigarette, and I started packing this pack of cigarettes, and I looked to the window, and I recall thinking something happened there. I understand now. The Holy Spirit instantaneously came into my life. And it was him who was talking to me and telling me, if you take the first step, I'll show you power. And so it was. I threw the cigarettes away, and the first person that came to my mind, yeah, you guessed it, Grandma. I called her and I said, I would call her Mom. I said, Mom, this is happening to me. And she said, son, grab your things and come on over, and you're gonna be with me. I hung up the phone. I turned to my mother and said, I'm going with Grandma. She knew it was a good thing. And she approved and gave me her blessing, and I went to go live with this woman, and for 2 years I slept in the same room in different beds, but I saw the life of an intercessor. I saw the life of a woman who would get up every day at 3 a.m. to pray. I would hear her singing as she's got the beans on the pot boiling. There was always a song that she was singing in joy. She was to me Christ in the flesh, if I could say that. She was an example of what a godly Christian looks like. A faithful woman who loved her God with all her mind, soul, and strength, and her neighbor as herself. This was the beginning of a new journey for me in Christianity. But the battle had just begun.